Hey there, spinny Sprocketeers. Grant Carlisle here, back with another masterclass, and want to let you know that we love you. Want to start out with all of the Sprocketeer love. So, those of you tuning in, uh, Sprocketeer is championing the HubSpot Super Admin. One of the ways we do that is by going over technology that integrates with HubSpot. These integrations, there's over 1,000 of them. And so, how do you use them? When do you use them? That's what the masterclass is all about. And so, today with us, we have QuotaPath, who we've done a couple masterclasses before with. The team themselves are fantastic, and the tool that they are showing us, the tool that they continue to iterate on and go deeper with, it's super powerful. So most of these masterclasses have been how to specifically use QuotaPath to do something, to get into the nitty gritty, and then they walk us through how to do it. With that being said, a couple call outs here. We have QuotaPath not only integrated with HubSpot, it's a certified app on the HubSpot marketplace. So those of you who know about certified apps, there's not many of them. And the ones that are certified work well with HubSpot, and the thing that they do standalone, they do well. And that's why HubSpot goes ahead to get them certified. We know QuotaPath does it well because they've been rated 5 stars. So all of their reviews so far are 5 stars. You see that on the HubSpot app marketplace. So much so, on top of that, that HubSpot put them in a special category in the marketplace for top sales solutions. You see that here over on the left. So QuotaPath is the place to be. It's not just Sprocketeers saying that, it's HubSpot saying it. Today, we're going to be going over how to design a compensation plan. And with us today from QuotaPath to do that is Graham Collins. Hey, Graham.
Hey, Grant. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Always a good time. Graham is the chief of staff at QuotaPath and resident sales nerd. He not only is a good-looking man, he's also a cool guy. I got a chance to catch up with him at Inbound. We had a great time. And every time that we're on these calls, it's awesome that Graham gets to show us through the use case that we're about to see. But my favorite part is that Graham is able to bring his experience and knowledge into the things that he's sharing with us. So thanks for being here, Graham.
Yeah, happy to be here.
All right, I will pull my screen down and you can go ahead and share, and
Absolutely.
we'll get into building the comp plan.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, so what we're going to be chatting through today is how to design a compensation plan. And so got a few slides here, just intro slide, who I am. As Grant mentioned, I am the chief of staff at QuotaPath, commission tracking platform. My role has been a lot of things over the years, but major function of what I do is I sit down with sales leaders, RevOps leaders, finance leaders, help them build out the right compensation plan for their company. So I've done almost 500 of those at this point. I'll probably break 500 before the end of the year. So prior to that, I ran sales organizations, SDR organizations, and worked as a seller myself. I carried a bag for about 10 years. So
love it.
Yeah. So why are we talking about this? And for those of you who have seen my other master classes, this is a common slide that I pull up, is that 86% of reps that we surveyed ranked compensation as their top priority when job hunting. And so comp is key to motivating reps and retaining top talent. And so much of that is getting the right compensation plan for your organization. So we are going to walk through how to do that. First, I love this chart. This shows you how much comp plan knowledge you have and how hard you think it is to build comp plans. So if you know nothing about building a comp plan, you're like, oh, it's so easy. And then as you learn more and more, you're like, oh God, this is so complicated. There's so many other facets to this. And then you realize once you learn even more that it's really not that hard. It's pretty straightforward and easy. So it's just a bit of math. But speaking of math, you don't have to do the math yourself. We recently, about a month ago, rolled out this tool called Compensation Hub. It's at comp.quotapath.com. Pull it up in a separate tab, come back to it once you're done watching this. But it's a tool that is designed to help you build and create and customize your own comp plan based on specifics about your own company. So it's not just like a library of comp plans that might work for you. It's one that's designed specifically for your business. So
I will say, those Sprocketeers listening, Graham showed us this a couple times now. Go to comp.QuotaPath.com. If you already have installed and integrated QuotaPath into your HubSpot, whatever you built at comp.QuotaPath.com, you can port over into your HubSpot portal. If you don't have QuotaPath yet, or you haven't integrated it into HubSpot yet, you can export it and save it. And it can be a template you can show to the rest of your team, to a manager, of a way or a direction you want to go. It's an awesome free tool.
Awesome. Yeah. And it's a totally free tool, and it's not even gated. So you don't even need to, give us your email address. It's just, I don't know how that is for demand gen, but hey, you can just go there and use it without even entering any information in. So, cool. Well, so let's talk a little bit about how to build a comp plan. So Grant, whenever I'm talking to somebody about how to build a compensation plan, there are 3 questions that you have to answer with a comp plan. It's how much do you want to pay them, for what, and how are you going to pay them? And so this applies to pretty much everybody in a sales organization. A lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about may be individual contributor, AE, salesperson specific. So if you're like, hey, why are we talking about these specific things? That's why. So just as we're going through this, there are 3 other questions that you probably should answer. We don't touch about that in this course, but when do you pay them? Why don't you pay them? What are reasons why you might not pay somebody? And who else within an organization needs to get paid on those deals? So
that gives us a high level, Grim. It makes sense to me that you can understand that the how much, what, and how.
Yeah.
That so, now I know what I need to be thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. And so now I want to dive a little bit deeper into each of these, because this is kind of like it's like a Russian doll of masterclass here. What you're going to look at is like, you just looked at the biggest Russian doll. We're going to take it out. We're going to have like, okay, so we'll do one slide on how much, for what, and how, and then we'll do even more on each of those. And so this is the second layer deep. This is the second layer of the onion, or Russian doll, if you will. So how much? So this question about how much you're paying somebody is broken down into 2 different components: the OTE, or on target earnings, and the pay mix. So the OTE is how much someone can expect to earn if they hit 100% of their quota or their targets. And the pay mix is what % of that OTE is base salary and what % of it is variable. And so we'll dive a little bit deeper into this, but each role, each area of the world has slightly different expectations around that. And so knowing that is really important as well.
Got it. So those of you like brand new, this is something that Graham talks about all the time: OTE and that mix, what they are, how to move them around. And even looks like you have the comp.QuotaPath here that you can slide and move. And it should feel like that look, there's either this big number that you're going to attain, but then within that big number, what's the mixture inside of it?
Exactly. Yeah. So then if we look at for what are the quotas or targets that you're holding somebody to? And then, so what's the amount? And is that amount revenue or quantity based? So is it like, hey, you have to sell $1 million, or is it you have to set 50 demos or close 10 deals or whatever it is? And then quota frequency. How often are you measuring their progress, or how often does their quota reset? Now, should be measuring progress very often, as often as you potentially can. But you can see in the bottom right corner there, it determines, depending upon your average sales price and your sales cycle, you'll get different answers as far as how often you should reset that quota between monthly, quarterly, annual, and other. Sometimes people do biannual. Sometimes people do. We have some customers on weekly quotas.
Right.
Those are the most common. And then how. Okay. And so how are you paying these people out? Is it a commission? So a commission is going to be a percentage of a currency. And that can either be a single rate, meaning you earn 10% flat on everything you sell, or multiple rate, meaning it's based off of your quota attainment. or the different products you sell, or the length of your contract. Sometimes you get 10% if you sell a 1-year deal, 15% of a 2-year, 17% of a 3-year, something like that. That's actually becoming more and more common. We've seen an increase since 2020 of about 21% of the companies that we survey. So now almost half of companies that we survey pay different commission rates for different lengths of a contract.
Interesting. Yeah, they want that security of that cash flow.
Oh yeah. Want that 2 or 3 years locked in. I mean, especially as we approach a uncertain economic time, we are, although I don't know the stock market, I haven't checked it recently, but when I checked it this morning, it shot right up. So who knows? But they're trying to lock that revenue in. And then a bonus is a set amount of money you earn for doing something specific. Again, it can be you get paid $100 for every demo you set, or $1,000 for every deal you close, or it can be you get paid a $500 bonus if you hit your quota every month, something like that.
Okay, yeah. The commission or the bonus, that's the how. Okay, got it.
Yeah. And so now we're 3 levels into the Russian doll. Now we're into the very specifics on each one of those different components. So got it. This is probably the longest portion of the master class, but it's going to give you some actual specific things that you're going to want to see. So how much? OTE? I don't know. I don't know how much to pay for OTE, and I know that sounds bad, but
how much?
So it varies so much by region, by industry, experience, title, customer type. What type of sale it is, whether it's a transactional or a consultative. The on-target earnings varies anywhere from $40,000 a year all the way up to $400,000 a year, and so doing research on that. Figuring that out, there are resources out there that you can use to try to figure out what the OTE should be for your specific. If I was to try to give you a number here, the chart would be unreadable based on all of those different attributes.
And Graham, that makes sense. There's no smoking gun number. There's not this function or algorithm that you can just input and here's what it should be. What I've heard you talk mostly about is here's generally some numbers of what people are doing. And here's maybe some recommendations. But I will say, out of everything I've heard you say, there's also these 2 parallel lines of where is the business currently at and where do you want it to be? And so that even comes into play is if you're growing or if, like you said, the economic times are bad. So it seems very variable.
Absolutely. I mean, and people who are new to hiring and managing salespeople can sometimes be appalled at how much salespeople get paid. A $400,000 is not an entirely unheard of amount of money to spend on a very good salesperson, but they have to be able to cover that. They have to pay, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the quota setting component. But on average, in the US, in SaaS or software, the average that I see is about $140,000 of on-target.
Gotcha.
Is the kind of easy way of if you hold my feet to the fire and make me give you an answer. That's not what I think. But what is fairly consistent, at least in the US now, in Europe and in APAC, it's slightly different, but the pay mix. For account executives, we're looking at generally a 50-50. So 50% of their on-target earnings would be base salary, 50% is variable. Same for sales managers and sales directors. Once you start moving up the ranks in a sales organization, it can shift to more base salary, but still the norm is still fairly 50-50. Sometimes you see 55-45 or 60-40, but it's still fairly 50-50. And however, SDRs, people who are responsible for scheduling meetings for the sales team, closer to about a 65-35. Your account managers, your CSMs are getting up into the 70-30, 80-20. Sales engineers, 80-20. Essentially, the further away you are from the person directly responsible for closing the deal, the more likely the base salary is a higher proportion.
And that's what I wanted to set you up with. I'm so glad you answered. It's like, why does it change? It's like, well, these people are literally on the phone or they're doing the emailing every day. And these people are on the back end enabling them.
Yeah, exactly. And so they have less, your sales engineer isn't the one closing the deals. And so they have less control. And so much of comp plan comes down to who can control what.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. You said control, and I led with enablement. It's really about who has control over the outcome. Because the sales engineer, you
Yeah.
want some skin in the game. I get that. But where you're saying the percentage is because they don't really have control. If they set everything up correctly, but then it doesn't close, that's not because they didn't set it up correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And same for your SDR. You know, they schedule the demos for the sales team, but they're not the ones actually closing the deals generally. They are setting them up for success, but not closing the deals. So for what? So again, how much, for what, and how. So we're on to for what. So now we need to talk about quotas. Quota, target, gets thrown around a lot. It's how much you want your rep to close, or your manager or what have you. But this is a little bit fairly specific to our new biz sales reps here. Those are the most common person in your sales organization will be your closers. So there's no one way to set a quota, and nor do I really recommend just using one way. I always like to triangulate with at least two different methods here. So the first one is guessing. Don't do that. Don't finger in the wind. That's the worst possible way of setting quotas. Yeah. I mean, and I hear this a lot where people are like, well, I don't know. I don't know how much my reps are going to be able to sell. I don't know how much I should ask them to sell. And it's like, fine, but don't just come up with a number out of nowhere. And the other one that is I often see is like what you did at your last company. Now, unless your last company was in the exact same position, the same industry, same everything as your current company, that doesn't make sense to set the
dartboard method is not effective here.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So instead, what you can do are things like quota to OTE ratio. So the idea of this is you take that on target earnings number. So say you take that 140 that I said earlier, and you multiply it by some number. And that gives you their annualized quota. Now I say annualized because, again, we'll talk about how to set the quota frequency. Not always saying you need an annual quota. Maybe it's a quarterly quota, but it's an annualized number. And so say I'm a SaaS company that's $0 to $5 million in revenue on an annual basis. I take that number, 140, and multiply it by 4.1. And that's what gets me that quota. So now I'm not, let's see, I'm not that good at math. So then we have a $574,000 a year quota.
For those of you trying to think about this, right? If you're trying to get a salesperson hired in, or you just hired them in and you want to pay them $200,000 a year, or that's what you need to, all of a sudden you have now this annual salary to work with. And you, like Graham said, multiply that by some number and it gets you now a quota you can start to play with.
Yeah, exactly. So if you did a $200,000, multiply it by 4.1, that takes you to $840,000 a year, or $820,000.
So are you showing us these percentages here, this 4.1, 5.6 on that purple chart? Or that's
that's the average. So that's the average multiplier for each of the different revenue ranges for these companies. So the 0 to, and this is SaaS companies as well. So if you're a SaaS company and your company's revenue is $18 million, you're going to fall in that 5 to 25. You're probably on average going to be around 5x. And as you can see, it ramps up over time. So if you're at $5.1 million, don't assume you would instantly need to jack up your quotas by a substantial amount. Historically, the golden average has been 5x. That is right for some businesses, but know that there are a lot of factors that can increase or decrease this multiplier.
That's really helpful for founders, especially to know what a salesperson might expect having come from the market. And maybe you're hiring them into, a new org, and you're trying to, what would they expect or what would they see somewhere else and thus be able to represent inside your org?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
Historical performance is another way of looking at setting the quota. So what is possible? What have people done in the past? What percent of your team do you want to hit quota? Looking at the normal curve of attainment of each of your reps and saying, okay, quota is going to be set right here so that 50% of my reps hit quota, or it's going to be set here so that 80% of my reps hit 80% of quota. That's a metric that gets thrown around a lot, of the 80% hitting 80%.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's one way to do it. If you don't have historical data,
right,
it's harder to do. That's the number one thing where people push back on.
And again, Graham, I'm hearing you say there's not like here's not the answer, but here's some general ways to think about it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the last way is to say, what's the top down? You know, what does your board want you to do? What's your head count? Do those line up? Or will you need to have your reps sell twice as much or hire twice as many reps in order to hit those targets? So going about it that way as well, and at least testing and saying, okay, great. You know, a 4X is where we said with the multiplier, that's historically accurate, and it lines up with the financial model.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've set the quota amount, so again, we're looking at that. Let's say it's a 200K person, 4X multiplier, we're at $800,000 a year.
Yeah.
We need to set the quota frequency. Now, this is where the compensation hub, comp.QuotaPath.com, can really help you out because it does this math for you.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is you want to balance two things. You want to find the shortest possible quota frequency that makes sense for your business, because the more often we measure our progress towards goals, the more likely we are to attain them. So we want to have a short quota frequency, but we also want to have a period or a frequency that allows you to close at least 5 deals during that period. So if I said shortest possible, you'd say, okay, well, let's do a daily quota or a weekly quota. But the issue is that if you have, and this is an example here where we have a $50,000 quota, and let's say, okay, a $50,000 monthly quota. So if my average contract value is $30,000, the issue here is that I close 1.5-ish deals per month. And that doesn't make sense, because then I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I can't measure my progress. Did I close 1 deal, 2 deals, 3 deals? Like, well, 0 deals. Yeah, so that wouldn't be good. But if I have a $10,000 average contract value and a $50,000 monthly contract, that's great, because then my total quota is broken into smaller chunks, smaller number, higher
Got
number.
it.
So
right. Again, some kind of barriers to maybe think about when you would go over, and it just wouldn't make sense because you've gotten it too long. But you can then do it the other way, where it's too frequent, where it's like weekly. I think we talked about last time. There's a company I worked at where there were 1 and 2 year lead times on closing deals, and then it didn't get delivered for another 2 years. So like you have to know your business too.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the longer the sales cycle, and this was a slide that I had a while back as well, somewhere here, bottom right corner there, the longer the sales cycle, the longer your quota period.
Right.
The higher the average sales price, the longer your quota period.
Yeah.
Now, those two are kind of correlated as well. You have a high contract value, generally a longer sales cycle. So those two are correlated for sure. But we won't get into multicollinearity here. So.
Buying buildings and cities and railroads.
So finally, the answer. Okay, so now we have how much we're going to pay this person. Again, I'm using my easy example of $200,000 a year. We know that it's going to be a 50-50 base variable split. We're going to multiply that number by 4 to give us our quota of $800,000 annualized. But because of my average contract value, we're going to do a quarterly quota. Great. So now we're going to be at a quarterly quota, $200,000. How am I actually going to pay you on these, though? What are the bonuses? What are the commission rates?
Okay.
So again, another plug for Compensation Hub. Head over to Compensation Hub. You can see each of these different plans. Click into it, gives you examples, gives you a calculator, allows you to do all of the math automatically. But I want to dive into a few of these and just show you a few common examples, why you might use them and why you might avoid them. So single rate commission. This is the one where at the beginning of the chart, or at the beginning of the presentation, if you're in the bottom left corner of the chart there, you're saying, just pay a single rate. You can pay 10% commission off of everything you sell. It's easy to understand. It's simple. You don't even need QuotaPath to track the commissions on that. You do the math. However, something like 96% of our customers don't use this. Only 4% of our customer base uses a single rate commission. So
good to know.
Yeah. And so it's overly simple. It doesn't allow for nuance. It doesn't allow for those multi-year deals. It doesn't allow for those the accelerators and decelerators that we'll be talking about here in a minute. So again, not a very common, but it is, if you can get away with it, this is the simplest, easiest plan possible.
Gotcha.
Commission with accelerators. So the idea is that the more you sell, the higher percent of what you sell you earn. So you earn 10% until you hit your quota, and then you earn 15% of anything over that. These are very, very common. And as we saw, I think almost 80%, 79% of organizations use accelerators of some sort in their compensation plans. So very, very common. I love accelerators. They're great. There are two different types of accelerators you have to be cognizant of, where it either applies to everything you've already sold that quarter, or it's only on the overage. Meaning, okay, I earn 10% until I hit my quota, and then anything over my quota, I earn 15% on. Or once I hit my quota, I earn 15% retroactively on everything I've already sold.
Interesting.
So there are those two different types. So be careful with those, because it can be a costly mistake if you do the wrong one. Because if it's applied back to everything I've sold, and all of a sudden I go from 10 to 20%, I just doubled the amount of money that I have to pay this person. So.
And Graham, do you see if the quota has to be attained, is that annoying for reps to be like, well, I don't hit my quota because you've priced me out of ever reaching it? How do you have that conversation?
Yeah. So first of all, having a conversation about this kind of conversation where you say, hey, this is why your comp plan is built the way it is. Giving people the understanding of this, I didn't just finger in the wind this quota. This is where this quota is coming from. Gives reps the understanding that, like, okay, well, then I don't need to work. Then this is attainable. They believe this is attainable. Also, this plan pays you that flat rate all the way up until you hit your quota. So it's paying you a fair rate all throughout as you're selling it. So if you end at 90% of your quota, you're still getting paid 90% of the commission that you earn. Good question, though, because what you can have, and what we see also a lot, are decelerators. The idea that, say, until you hit 50%, you only earn 5% of everything you've sold. So it's kind of like a double whammy. I've ended at 40% of my quota, so I'm not going to get paid on a ton of money I sold. Plus, I get a lower commission rate on that. So instead of earning, if I end at 40%, I don't get 40% of my bonus. I'm only getting 20% of it, because I'm getting paid half as much as I would be getting paid. These are good because it gives you a reason to overachieve. And it allows the underperformers to pay for the overperformers. Meaning, like, I can give you more aggressive accelerators because the person sitting next to you, you're essentially taking their commission away from them. It's going in your pocket instead of theirs because you sold more. But it can feel very punitive. It can be, that's where you get reps who are upset about it. Not as much as the next one, which I'll talk about. But it's also tough for new companies to try to roll these out because you're not exactly positive on setting those quotas a lot of the time.
Yeah, Graham, I feel like this is a positioning one. I hear what you're saying. If you call this a decelerator, it's almost like you just have two quotas, right?
Yeah.
If you just said there's two accelerators, I'm getting that.
I see what you're saying. And so this is a even a more punitive one where you don't earn anything until you hit a certain minimum bar of acceptability. Ouch. And then really it clearly outlines that. And so oftentimes the reason that these are put in place is because organizations don't want to pay if the rep hasn't paid back their base salary. And so that's where, your rep pays back their base salary and then they begin earning off of that.
And do you see this happening retroactive? Is this more often when this is the case that anything you've also sold, also you get the commission on?
Yeah, typically this is retroactive. And so, I mean, in this floor, ideally you'd want it at a minimum bar of acceptability, so 40, 50, 60%, something like that. I've seen it all the way up to 100. I hate that. Don't do that. Or 80 or 90 or whatever. And so,
that hurts.
Yeah. And the other thing is that this can be kind of almost a catch-22 where you're like, yeah, it's there just in case. And then, a job seeker can be like, well, how often does it happen? And you're like, oh, it almost never happens. It's like, well, then why do you have it? If it never happens, why is it there?
Yeah.
And so that it can raise suspicions among job seekers. And as we talked about, 86% of reps rank compensation as the major thing that they're looking at, or their top priority.
Yeah.
So it also can encourage sandbagging. I wrote a blog post about sandbagging, and sandbagging meaning holding deals until the following quarter. Because if I'm at 20%, this deal is only going to take me another, up to 40%. And I don't get paid until I hit 50. Why would I bother closing it?
Yeah, I'm going
to wait. Yeah. And then you risk losing the deal altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So this one I'm not a huge fan of. The commission with accelerators and milestone bonus, I really like this plan. I think this is one of my favorite plans. It combines that accelerator we talked about. It doesn't have the decelerator. It just has the accelerator. However, it also gives you a bonus as soon as you hit 100% of your target.
Okay.
And you don't earn any less. Like if you hit 99.5% of your quota, you don't earn that bonus. It's as soon as you cross over. And you don't get any more for hitting 200, 300, 400% of your quota. I mean, you're getting that accelerator. So you do get more, but that bonus just kicks in once and gives you a kicker for hitting your quota. So the reason I like this is it encourages consistency. It creates this okay, I need to hit my quota every single month or every single quarter in order to get this bonus, especially if you have a lot of seasonality, or like most organizations, you close the vast majority of your business in the third month of the quarter. This might encourage consistency across the quarter if you give a monthly milestone bonus.
Have you seen, Graham, a bonus hit at 80 or 90% with the accelerator at the 100?
I have, yeah. Okay. I have. The issue with that is you're signaling that that's where you want them to end. That you want them to end at 80 or 90%. So sometimes what I see is the flat rate and then maybe a bonus at every 10%. I don't love that, but at 50%, at 75%, at 100%. It's
the consistency.
A few milestone bonuses, where then it would look like a kind of a stair step.
Stair stepping. So it's not end here. It's more as you progress, we want to reward you. And when you get to that accelerator, it's a big payoff because you've hit the 100% like we asked.
Yep. Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah. So that's certainly an option. Commission with multi-year accelerators. So this is the last one that I'm going to highlight. Again, I'll flip over comp.QuotaPath. You can see all of them, but we're going to talk about commission with multi-year accelerators. So as we saw, almost half of organizations pay more for 2-3-year deals. That also includes sometimes organizations that pay less for monthly deals, month-to-month deals, or 6-month deals, or things like that.
Yeah.
I really like paying for multi-year deals because I really like locking in revenue. The longest contract I ever sold is a 5-year SaaS contract, which I don't know if I'd ever sell another 5-year deal, because most software companies, are they still around in 5 years in their current format, or do they have the product for it? So higher likelihood of longer contracts. It gives your reps a few different ways of earning their OTE. So what I mean by that is if I sell all 3-year deals and I'm earning 15% on the ARR, well, I don't have to hit 100% of my quota in order to get my full on-target earnings. Now, that can also be a con as well, because you want your reps hitting their quota. But that's where you might add accelerators in for actually hitting the quota. So.
Yeah.
And there are a whole bunch of different ways that you can pay on these multi-year accelerators. You can pay, you're generally paying on the ARR. One option is to essentially pay on the total contract value, which is to say I know you get paid 10% of everything. And if you close a 2-year deal, it's twice as much revenue. And so you get paid twice as much. I'd avoid that because it's very expensive. But what I generally do is pay 10% on a 1-year contract, 15% on a 2-year contract, 17.5% on a 3-year contract.
Gotcha.
And that's paid on the ARR, and that's paid up front because you want to pay your reps as quickly as possible.
Love that.
So now that we know how much, for what, and how,
right,
everybody is, if we look at that chart, I don't know if you're quite, go to the beginning here. I don't know if you're going to be quite at the, all the way in the bottom right, but hopefully you're on the down slope there, and it's seeming easier and easier to build these comp plans as you've learned quite a bit more about them.
I think we're on the other side. It might be a fun in the comments. Drop where you find yourself along the curve. Would you put yourself at 20%?
Yeah, if this just confused you even more, I'm sorry. You're on your way up the roller coaster. There we go. You're on your way up the roller coaster, and don't worry, it's easier on the way down.
You'll get there.
Watch this a couple more times, and it'll make more sense.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Graham, for sharing this with us. Those of you Sprocketeers listening, if you'd like to reach out to Graham, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Graham D. Collins. Put the D in the middle there so that I can tell if somebody is sending me a spam message, because they'll always say, "Hi, Graham D." Immediately delete them. I'm on LinkedIn, or you can email me, Graham@QuotaPath.com. Happy to sit down and help out any Sprocketeers as well with building comp plans in the new year on our website, QuotaPath.com. Under resources, you can book time with me in the comp plan consult section.
Book time with Graham. Find him on LinkedIn. Tell him that you saw him here on Sprocketeers Masterclass. Those Sprocketeers listening who are a user, or you're the in-house kind of admin rep for your company, QuotaPath.com, get with Graham and have him walk you through it. We also have a couple more masterclasses where he's literally walked you through how to set up QuotaPath to HubSpot. So that look for that on the YouTube channel if you're watching that here, or listening on Spotify or Anchor. Beyond that, thank you so much, Graham, for being with us, sharing this with us. I know we've already done, I think this is number 4, but just showing up and sharing your experience, it's greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah. Anything for the Sprocketeer community.
Woohoo! All right, Sprocketeers, take care, spinny, and we'll see you on the next one.